You didn't lose your faith all at once. It started with one question, a small one, almost harmless. The kind you weren't even supposed to take seriously. And yet, it didn't go away. It sat there, quiet, patient, like a splinter in your mind. And the strange part is, the more you tried to ignore it, the sharper it became. So here's the real question. Why does one question feel strong enough to break something people have believed for a lifetime? The question you weren't supposed to ask. Every belief system has rules. Some are written clearly, printed in books, repeated in rituals. Others are never said out loud, but you feel them anyway. They sit in the background like quiet instructions you somehow learned without being taught. Do not doubt too much. Do not push too far. Just trust. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. Trust keeps things stable. It keeps everything from falling apart. Most people are not trying to rebel. They are trying to belong. They are trying to feel certain in a world that already feels unpredictable enough. But here is where something strange happens. Thinking is not a bad habit you picked up. It is the core function of your mind. You question things every day without even noticing. You compare, you evaluate, you look for patterns. That is how you navigate life. No one tells you to stop thinking when it comes to money, relationships, or health. In fact, people praise you for it. So when a question appears in your mind about belief, it does not feel unnatural, it feels consistent. A simple question, almost innocent. Why does an all-loving God allow suffering? You expect the same kind of response you would get anywhere else. A clear answer, something that holds up under pressure, something that makes sense even after you sit with it. But instead, you get something different. You get silence. Or you get answers that feel like they are moving around the question instead of through it. Sometimes you hear phrases that sound comforting at first, but empty when you think about them twice. You start to notice that the answer is not really answering. And that is the moment where something subtle begins to shift. Because deep down, you recognize the difference between truth and avoidance, and once you feel that difference, even slightly, it becomes very hard to unfeel it. The first crack. Faith does not usually collapse all at once. It rarely ends in some dramatic moment where everything falls apart in a single day. It begins much smaller than that. It starts with a crack that is easy to miss if you are not paying attention. On the outside, nothing really changes. You still follow the same routines. You say the same words at the same moments. You nod along when others speak. From a distance, everything looks intact. If someone asked you, you might even say nothing has changed. But inside, something feels slightly different. There is a second voice now. Not loud, not aggressive, just present. It shows up at quiet moments, usually when you are not distracted. And it asks something simple, almost casual. Does this actually make sense? That question does not come with anger. It is not trying to tear anything down. If anything, it sounds curious. But that is exactly what makes it hard to ignore. It is not attacking your belief. It is examining it. And here is the part that makes people uncomfortable. You did not choose that voice. You did not sit down one day and decide to doubt everything. It arrived on its own, like your mind finally reached a point where it could no longer stay silent. Almost like a switch flipped somewhere in the background without asking for permission. It feels a bit like that moment at a family dinner when everything has been running on routine for years, and suddenly someone asks a question no one expected. Not rude, not aggressive, just direct enough to make everyone pause. The room goes quiet for a second, because everyone realizes the question is valid, but no one really wants to deal with it. That is what this voice feels like. Awkward, yes, but also honest. And once it speaks, even softly, it becomes very difficult to pretend you did not hear it. The problem with because it says so. At some point, every belief system leans on authority. It points to something higher, something established, something that feels bigger than individual opinion. Sacred texts carry weight because they have been preserved for generations. Tradition feels reliable because so many people followed it before you. Leaders speak with confidence, and that confidence can sound a lot like certainty. And for a while, that works. When you are not asking too many questions, Authority feels like a shortcut to truth. It saves time. It removes doubt. It gives you a structure to stand on without having to build it yourself. Most people are not looking to challenge it. They are looking to rely on it. But then something shifts. A simple question appears. Why should I trust this? Not in a rebellious way, not with anger, just honestly. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Because if the only answer you receive is that it is written, or that it has always been this way, you start to notice something strange. The explanation does not move forward. It circles back on itself. The claim is being supported by the claim. It begins to feel like someone saying a book is true because the book says it is true. At first, that might sound acceptable. After all, people around you accept it. But the more you think about it, the more it starts to feel incomplete. You would not accept that kind of reasoning anywhere else in your life. If a product promised results just because it claimed to work, you would hesitate. You would want evidence, not repetition. And here is where your mind quietly draws a line. It starts separating confidence from credibility. Because something can sound certain without actually being supported. Something can feel established without being examined. And once your brain notices that difference, it becomes harder to ignore. The fear behind the faith. Now, this is where things get deeper and a little more uncomfortable. The resistance you feel when you ask a real question is not just intellectual. It is not only about logic or evidence or finding the right answer. It is emotional, and that part is easy to miss because it does not announce itself clearly. When you question a belief, you are not just risking being wrong, you are risking losing something that has been part of your life for a long time. Community matters more than people admit. It gives you a place, a sense of belonging, a feeling that you are not alone in how you see the world. Identity is tied into it as well. Belief is not just something you think, it is often something you are. It shapes how you describe yourself, how others recognize you, how you fit into conversations and relationships. Then there is meaning, that quiet sense that life has direction, that things happen for a reason, that there is some kind of order behind the chaos. And comfort, of course. The kind that helps you sleep at night without questioning everything all at once. That combination is powerful. So people do not hold on to beliefs only because they are true. They hold on to them because they are useful. Because they create stability in a world that does not offer much of it on its own. It is a bit like keeping an old chair in your house. It squeaks every time you sit down. It is not the most comfortable anymore. If you are honest, it probably should have been replaced years ago. But it has been there forever. You know it. It feels familiar. And somehow that familiarity makes it harder to let go. Belief can work the same way. So when you ask that one honest question, you are not just examining an idea. You are touching something that supports multiple parts of your life at once. And that is why the reaction feels so strong. Because whether you realize it or not, you are not just questioning a belief. You are threatening the structure built around it, the hidden contract. Faith often comes with an unspoken deal, and most people never notice it because it is never presented directly. No one sits you down and explains the terms, you just absorb them over time. The deal is simple. Do not question too much, and in return, you get certainty. And certainty feels good. It removes doubt, it gives clear answers, it makes the world feel more ordered than it really is. You do not have to wrestle with every difficult question, because the system already claims to have resolved them for you. For a while, that trade feels worth it. But here is the part that usually stays hidden. Certainty is not free. It costs curiosity, because curiosity keeps asking questions that certainty cannot always answer. It costs honesty, because sometimes you feel the tension between what you are told and what actually makes sense to you. And in some cases, it costs truth, or at least the full pursuit of it, because certain lines are not meant to be crossed. At first you might not notice the cost. Everything still works on the surface. But over time, that quiet pressure builds. You start to feel like parts of your thinking have to be held back, like there are areas you are not supposed to explore too deeply. Then one day, you step slightly outside that invisible boundary. You ask something simple, something honest. And instead of finding clarity, you find resistance. That is when the realization begins to form. The questions were never the real problem. They are natural. They are expected. They are exactly what a thinking mind produces. The system, however, was not built to handle them fully. It works best when certain assumptions remain untouched. And that changes how you see things. Because suddenly, the tension you felt is not a personal failure. It is not a flaw in your thinking. It is a limitation in the structure you were taught to trust. Why smart people struggle more. This is where things become almost ironic. The more thoughtful you are, the harder blind faith becomes. Not because you are trying to rebel, not because you want to reject everything, but because you are consistent in how you think. You already use logic in every other part of your life. At work, you question decisions. In relationships, you look for honesty and coherence. When something feels off, you pause and examine it. That is not arrogance. That is basic awareness. No one tells you to stop thinking in those areas. In fact, people respect you for it. So when it comes to belief, your brain naturally tries to do the same thing. It applies the same standard. It asks the same kind of questions. It looks for the same clarity. And that is where the tension begins. Because belief often asks for a kind of exception. It quietly suggests that this one area should be handled differently. That here, you should trust without the same level of examination. That here, questions should be softer or fewer. It is almost like being told to use reason everywhere, except in the one place that claims to explain everything. That does not sit comfortably. Not if you are used to being honest with yourself. So the hesitation you feel is not resistance for the sake of resistance. It is your mind trying to stay consistent with its own rules. It is noticing that the standard has changed and asking why. Over time, that small inconsistency becomes harder to ignore. It builds slowly, without drama, just a quiet pressure that does not go away. You might push it aside at first. You might tell yourself it is not important. But it keeps returning, usually at the worst possible moments, when you are alone with your thoughts and there is nothing to distract you. And eventually, one simple question rises above the rest. Not loud, not aggressive, just persistent enough that you can no longer avoid it. The moment it shifts. There is a point where something changes, but it rarely looks the way people expect. It is not dramatic. There is no big confrontation, no clear turning point you can point to and say this is where everything ended. It happens quietly. Almost so quietly that you might miss it if you are not paying attention. You are going through your day, thinking the same thoughts, following the same routines, and then a realization surfaces, simple, direct, and a little unsettling. I do not actually believe this the way I used to. That thought does not come with strong emotion at first. It is not a wave of relief, and it is not panic either. It feels more like something unfamiliar settling in. A kind of mental silence where certainty used to be. And that unfamiliarity is what makes it noticeable. It is like being in a room you have lived in your entire life. You know where everything is. You move through it without thinking. But one day, you pause, and something feels different. The walls look the same, the furniture has not changed, and yet the room does not feel identical anymore. You cannot immediately explain why. You just know something shifted. And here is the important part that most people misunderstand. That moment did not come from rebellion. You did not force it. You did not wake up and decide to reject everything you once believed. If anything, you probably resisted it for a while. It came from honesty. From allowing yourself to notice what you actually think, instead of what you feel you are supposed to think. From not pushing the question away this time. From letting it sit long enough to show you something real. And once that honesty appears, even in a small way, it changes how you relate to everything else. Because now you are no longer just repeating belief. You are observing it. What the question was really doing. That one question you kept trying to ignore was never there to destroy anything. It only felt that way because of what it revealed. In reality, it was doing something much simpler and much more honest. It was testing your faith. Not attacking it, not mocking it, just quietly asking if it could hold up when examined. And that is a very different process than what most people assume. Because something that is true does not fear being questioned. If anything, it becomes clearer when you look at it directly. So the real tension was not caused by the question itself. It was caused by what happened next. Because whatever cannot survive a single honest question was never as strong as it seemed in the first place. It may have felt solid because it was repeated often, because it was shared by others, because it was never challenged deeply. But strength is not measured by how long something goes unquestioned. It is measured by what happens when it finally is. And that realization can feel uncomfortable at first. It might seem like something is being taken away from you, like certainty is slipping, like the ground is not as stable as it used to be. But if you look closer, something else is happening at the same time. You are seeing things more clearly. That does not mean everything falls apart. It does not mean every belief is false or meaningless. What it means is that some ideas were never fully examined, and now they are being looked at for the first time. And when you do that, a natural sorting process begins. Some ideas hold up. They make sense even under pressure. They stay consistent when you question them. Others do not. They weaken, they contradict themselves, or they rely on avoiding the very questions you are now asking. And that difference matters, because what you are experiencing is not loss, it is clarity. Not the kind that is handed to you, but the kind you arrive at yourself. Faith rarely breaks because someone wins an argument. It changes because of something much quieter. A question that stays. One that does not disappear when you distract yourself. One that keeps returning at the exact moment you finally have space to think. It is not loud or aggressive. It does not try to convince you. It simply refuses to be ignored. And maybe the real shift is not that you started doubting. Maybe it is that for the first time, you stopped silencing your own thoughts. You allowed yourself to follow the question instead of pushing it away. That is a very different kind of change. Because once that door opens, it does not close in the same way again. Not because something was taken from you, but because something became active. A kind of awareness that was always there, just waiting for permission. And now that it is awake, it will keep asking. Not to destroy, but to understand.